Welcome to episode 72 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is with Ryan Hansen. He is the founder of the Tara Hansen Foundation. Okay, it'll stick with me for just a second because this episode is not about type 1 diabetes, but it is about advocacy. And at the same time, during the conversation that I had with Ryan, the parallels between his story and what it's like to live with something catastrophic that at the same time is unexpected. Not that catastrophic things are usually expected, but what it's like to have something catastrophic happen in your life, see no real pathway out of it, but then find that pathway out, and to not just continue to live, but to live well and happily. I mean, Ryan's story is as much about us as it is about him. The situations are different, some of the words are different, but in the end, this is a story about getting hit square in the face with a shovel and picking yourself back up again and continuing to move on, not just because you should, but because you want to, and not just to stay alive, but to live with love and happiness. So there is really no good way to say this, I guess, and no good way to make this sound exciting or fun, but it isn't sad. It's not a sad story. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of humanity. It's a story of love. I think you're going to really be interested if you stop and hang out for a minute. So this is Ryan Hansen. He's going to talk to you today about maternal mortality, which is much more prevalent in the United States than you might think.
My name is Ryan Hansen. I am from New Jersey. Currently work at PR Newswire in Jersey City. I live in Hinton Falls, New Jersey with my wife, Mary, oldest son, Brandon, and our youngest son, Dylan. I have 2 dogs, which my wife now jokes that we have a baby might be too many, but we do still love them very much. And that's really my story. I'm an advocate for maternal health. I have a foundation that I run, and I work really hard to try and educate the public on the complications of pregnancy and childbirth so that people are aware.
What's the name of the foundation?
The Tara Hansen Foundation.
And then that's named after your first wife?
Yes, my first wife, Tara Hansen. She had passed away due to complications after the birth of our first child, Brandon. And in light of that, I ended up starting this foundation to hopefully educate expecting parents that this is something that can happen here in the United States and not just in developing nations.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I thought is I live in New Jersey also, and you're like I live on the East Coast. We think of the East Coast as being one of the hubs of healthcare, and was your wife seemingly healthy during her pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely. She was 29 years old. An athlete, someone who was always very active, very in shape. So she found out she was pregnant, fully embraced the lifestyle that came along with it, continued to stay active, stay in shape, ate really well. I'm really thankful she had a great experience, a great pregnancy. Really enjoyed it and took great care of herself and, complication free throughout the entire pregnancy.
Okay. And this is about over 5 years ago, maybe?
Yes. Okay. 2011, March 2011.
Okay. So you go through a 9-month pregnancy with no issues and everything looks like it's the way it needs to be. Did you schedule the first birth or did water break or how did you end up at the hospital?
She was a week late. So we finally, kept going all the appointments, kept going kind of day by day, if I remember correctly at that point. And after a week, they had said, Tara, it's been a week. You're a week overdue. And, that's really as far as we let it go. So we were scheduled to go in for an induction, which we did after that last appointment.
Right. Okay. That's really something. My wife's water broke the night before we were supposed to go to be induced. So it
Okay.
was midnight. We were like packing bags and getting ready to get up in the morning and go to the hospital. And she's like, "Hey, you know what? I think we actually have to go now." So you're having that whole sort of just like first baby experience, and everyone's a little late the first time it seems, and you're on your way to the hospital. You go to the hospital. You see the doctor you're expecting to see. I imagine it wasn't,
hmm
but okay. And did they induce Tara? They ended up doing that.
Yeah, yes. We went in the night before, got prepped, woke up early Friday morning, and they started the entire induction process and just kind of went from there. Scheduled. They were expecting us, everything that you could kind of expect when going into that
Yeah.
situation.
So nothing abnormal. She gives birth to Brandon pretty the way you would expect, or where did the complications begin?
Yeah, for the most part, the delivery went, I assume as planned, as the doctors had kind of looked for it to go. She delivered, vaginally. It wasn't a C-section. And by the time we are kind of settled into postpartum, she started experiencing some issues. There were some, feeling faint, almost fainting, and these things just kind of led to, and the best way that I put it is a general feeling of just malaise. Not just the tiredness and the soreness that we had kind of expected, but she just overall didn't feel well and knew that wasn't what she was supposed to be feeling. I can't, explain it really better than just an overall, I just don't feel myself. And this is a woman who was, active and healthy, who was really in tune with her body.
So how long, not knowing anything about childbirth, this being your first go round with it, at how long into that feeling of malaise until you say something to the doctors? Because I imagine at first you're probably just like, "Oh, I'm tired because this is tiring," but how long until you say something to them? Is it the first night, the next day? Is it longer?
I would say it's the next day, early the next day, where it's, let's bring this up. Let's just say something, something's not right. Let's just find out. Let's get it on the table, see what everybody has to say, and kind of make sure everybody knows.
And how do they treat the information? Like it's to be worried about or normal?
No, and that's the unfortunate thing. Always looking back on it, it was basically the answer we would continually get is, you just had a child. You should expect to be sore, be tired. And the more we kept bringing it up, the more that answer just became a curt, you just had a baby. You're okay. You just had a baby.
So
Um,
Tara's symptoms are mirroring common occurrence, but they're not common. And everyone's just kind of happy to tell you just had a baby. It's okay. Let it go. Do you ever buy into that, or do you fight against it the whole way?
I'm listening to Tara, understanding that she's the one in the situation, going through it, and she's telling me, Rye, I don't understand why. I don't know what it is. And we're thinking about other people like that, we know have children, not hearing the same things from them. And she's just going, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I just don't feel good.
She knows it's not right.
Yeah.
Well, when does it? I mean, I don't know what the word is. When does it take a turn? Then is she still in the hospital when things begin to go south, or are you at home by then?
Yeah. By the time we, unfortunately, we're discharged, sent home, and now we've gone a few days with this issue, not being detected, not being controlled, observed, efforts to fix it. So we're home, and I always tell people we spent about 36 hours at home, as a family, who's just come home from the hospital having a baby, and we wake up on, I think it would be Tuesday morning, if I'm not mistaken, and Tara just says, I got to call the doctor. Something's wrong. We have to go see the doctor.
And at this point, same symptoms, or are they getting worse?
Yeah, definitely at this point, getting worse, getting to the point where I would say that she's now fearful for what may have happened, during this period of time. That feeling of not feeling well has turned into, a full on something's wrong.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm assuming your advice, and I talk about this all the time with my life with type 1 diabetes, but there's a moment when you have to trust what you're seeing in your life. You can't at some point just take someone else's word for it, whether they're a doctor or not. At some point you have to start kind of yelling and screaming and waving flags and sticking up for yourself. So you guys get back to the hospital. Do they take her more seriously at this point?
Yeah, at this point, we're readmitted. They send us back in, and our healthcare team, our team that we'd worked with throughout the entire pregnancies, now realize that this situation it far exceeds what they had anticipated or thought they were faced with when we were originally there.
Did they figure out what was going on at any point?
At this point, it's realized that Tara has an infection, severe at this point. As I had said before, now we've gone a handful of days with it, being completely uncontrolled. So, we're kind of at a point where things have become very serious.
Yeah. Is there something, I mean, now with hindsight and knowing the full story for yourself, is there something they could have done in those first couple of days to detect what was going on had they not just kept telling you it's okay, you just had a baby?
I do believe so. I think there could have been better observation, better communication, better listening to a new mother, a first-time mother, a woman who is saying, I don't feel well. And, with the foundation, what I've been through, we stress communication. We feel it's our best route to, creating more successful outcomes and helping people. If we had the channels of communication open with our healthcare providers, we really feel like the outcome that we got could have been different, that she would still be here.
Yeah. Instead of somebody just saying, I mean, my assumption is that when you talk to the nurses and you tell them how you're feeling, when they walk out in the hallway, they just think, oh, they're first-time parents. She just had a baby for the first time. She wasn't ready for what it was going to be like. And it's all just so normal. And so what it points to is that what happened to Tara is not the expectation. And so because it's not the expectation, nobody's mind goes to it. But you're saying that there needs to be a way that people's minds go to it, even just to make sure and check a box and go, okay, you know what, this is not a problem. This person is going to be okay at some point. We can't just assume that because most of the people who came through this floor this year didn't have any grand problems when they were done. Wow. So it ends up being an infection and it takes her in the hospital.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I said an infection becomes the issue. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's clear that it's an infection and then it is so advanced that they just can't get back in front of it again.
Yeah, at that point, it's too far ahead, unfortunately, for, the plan that they have. And, it's just gone too long. So, as we returned, we had just kind of, I guess, hit a tipping point at that moment. And unfortunately, it was too far gone.
Got on the wrong side of it.
Yep.
So you are, how long are you married at this point?
At this point, Tara and I were high school sweethearts, so I always kind of add that in. We had met when we were 16 and 17. Now we're both 29. We'd been married about 2.5 years at that point.
Wow. So you quite literally in 1 week went from the beginning of your family life to what felt like the end of your family life.
Yeah, the emotion that comes with childbirth, meeting your first child, watching your wife go through this. I remember an incredible sense of being so proud and amazed by what she had done. Meeting my son for the first time, just completely on cloud nine, and just having that pulled right out from under you. Yeah. And people say you hit rock bottom. You feel like you don't ever hit bottom in the beginning. Like
it's just not going to stop feeling worse today than it did
Absolutely.
yesterday. Yeah. Because my imagination is taking me to you're now in an incredibly difficult situation because your wife has passed away. And so your best friend and this person who you imagined you were about to start a long life with is now just gone. And on the same day, you've been given a son who I'm assuming you're feeling the responsibility immediately of raising him in a happy, healthy way. And how do you jump into parenthood and properly mourn your wife at the same time? Like, I can't imagine that those two things can exist in the same place, but how did you handle it?
Yeah, and I don't know that you do at first. For me, at this moment in my life, the only thing I have to keep my head above water is my son.
Yeah.
My wife and I had such a strong relationship that I'm thinking to myself, okay, one foot in front of the other for Brandon.
Right.
And my parents were with me the whole time. And at, the initial stage, the initial first week or so, we stayed at my house. And, eventually I just said to my parents, I said, you know what? My wife and I lived in a very tiny house at the time. But I said to them, let's go to your house. I moved in with my parents. They have bedrooms, they have everything we could need, and I needed them because I felt at that moment in time, no matter how hard I tried, the safest, best thing for both my son and myself was to have that support group around me, to have people who knew what they were doing. We could all kind of lean on each other and would make sure that Brandon was in a healthy, safe environment. And the three of us felt that we could all, together kind of make sure we put him first and took care of everyone.
Can you talk about for a second sort of the decision-making process that happens when a life that you expect disappears and you have to make an adjustment immediately? Because, this podcast is normally about type 1 diabetes, and it is it's similar in as much as that you can be going along one day and everything is exactly the way you expect it to be, and the next day someone tells you that if you don't inject this stuff into your son or daughter or to yourself, you're just going to die. And then suddenly everything that you thought your life was, it isn't anymore. And how did you ever fall into a depression?
Yeah. The way that I looked at it, the way I tell people now is, when Tara first passed, if it wasn't for Brandon, he was what I had to live for in that moment. He's what led me, every step of the way to kind of protect him. If he wasn't there, I don't know that the situation would have ended up the same way. I don't know if I would have come through it in the same way. I kind of looked at it as a life or death situation. A successful day for me was Brandon was fed, clothed, bathed, and going to bed at night. And, I always said, well, we're both alive. We're both here. Okay. We had a successful day. It was as simple as that to me. But, I also immediately went into therapy, found someone to talk to. I would say it was probably 3 weeks at the most after Tara passed that, a very close friend said to me, this is what, I really think you should do if you're up for it. I credit that with almost saving my life to a point, because that helped so much, because it's bigger than any one person or any family going through it can really comprehend.
Yeah, I can, obviously I can't imagine, I can't put myself, but I can put myself in your shoes. I would imagine that I could see myself being able to give up at any point if I lost my wife. Like, I just think that it's possible that any bad day could put me in a position where I was just like, I'm going to give up now. And even though, and the reason we're talking about it like this is because, you have another child now. You have a Dylan with your new wife, Mary. And so, I want people to understand that as terrible as your situation is, and obviously it doesn't in any way, make things better, but you can move on. And I don't wonder, in that moment, right in that actual moment, living in your parents' house, did you imagine there was moving on? Did you imagine there was happiness, or did you just think you were going to just trudge through this till the end?
At that time, I'm thinking it's me and Brandon from here on out. I'm going to do everything for him. That'll be good enough for me. As long as I can put him in a situation to thrive, that's all I need. The idea of ever really putting a family back together, I didn't want to. And I think after you lose a spouse, you almost feel like maybe you owe it to them to always just kind of be there.
Just be sad and remember them, right?
Yeah, and say,
stay in that
they
space.
can't be here to do it. Why should I, be able to be happy again? But it's a learning process, and you do owe it to yourself to heal and kind of rebuild yourself.
Dude, it's I mean, beautiful seems like the wrong word, but I think it's the right word at the same time, because it so much of life is deciding what it is you're going to do and doing it. That's really stunning. Ryan, I need to pause for a second because,
Sure.
and I'm glad to hear that you said you had dogs, because my dog, who never cries, is crying. Now seems like a good time to give you 2 web addresses that you need and a tiny bit of information. TaraHansenFoundation.com and MerckForMothers.com. Hansen is spelled Hansen. So it's the TaraHansenFoundation.com and MerckForMothers.com. Please check them out. Take a look. Also, I was going to, I did speak to a person from Merck for Mothers, and my intention was to take her interview and sort of intersperse it with Ryan's. But by the time I got done, I just thought everything she said was so interesting that I'm going to run it as a bonus episode after this. So you'll see a bonus episode called Merck for Mothers. If you are enjoying this, I suggest you download that one and listen to it next. Okay, let's get back to Ryan.
Hello.
Seriously, man, I have 2 dogs, right? One of them's constantly an issue. The other one is never an issue. The one who's never an issue is today an issue. So.
I understand, because we have 2 dogs. I had mine, Mary had hers, and my dog is nuts and hers is like perfect. So I totally get that.
I don't get how my perfect dog all of a sudden went bonkers for no real reason. So, and it's always now, like, the rest of the day, nothing will happen. So,
anyway, I hear you.
I apologize. So, but I appreciate you being flexible. I spent the entire time I was watching him walk around in the yard like a zombie, not exactly sure what he wanted. I spent it thinking about what you and I were just talking about. So, and it's a hard thing to jump in and out of, but I'm trying over and over again, because I'm in a very specific situation. Like, I've joked in my personal life and in a book that I pretty much just about have ovaries. Like, I'm almost a mom, and because the process of raising a child and giving it everything that it really needs on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, it just doesn't allow for you, if you really are interested in giving that child what it really wants and needs. It doesn't allow for you to ignore the feeling part of it. You know what I mean? You can't just be the guy that takes him to the park and then gets him home. It's like, there you go, here's a sandwich. Look at you. I love you, kid, and rub him on the head. It probably was a couple years into my son's life where I recognized that my wife would be giving this boy stuff, things, feelings, nurturing that isn't coming naturally to me, but that I could do. And then I started to do it. And then I started to realize that I don't want to just go through the motions. Like, I want to give myself over to it. But it's difficult, because you give away a lot of who you feel like you are as a man, in a strange sense. And because we've all decided that being soft and nice, or whatever you want to call it, that's a lady job. And being the one who says, hey, pick yourself up, don't stop, that's supposed to be the dad's job. But I think that's all kind of crap. Like, I think it's everybody's job. Like, I'm not less of a man because I'm the one who looks across the room and sees my kids talking to each other politely and nicely and actually gets a tear in his eye. I'm just happy that all this effort I'm putting into it is actually going somewhere.
Absolutely.
And so have you become, like, I guess my question would be, is you're remarried now to Mary, but how far into your process did you meet her, and did you have enough time to become that kind of hybrid dad mom thing that I'm explaining?
Yeah, it was 2 years before I met Mary, before I kind of, had a very close friend of mine who talked me into venturing out, who kind of said, Rye, you deserve to be happy. Nobody's looking for you to replace Tara, because you couldn't do it. but you should go out, find somebody who loves you, who loves Brandon, be happy. And during that whole time of taking care of him, I relied a lot on family, to show me the way. And yeah, you grow into this person who not only does the nitty gritty, taking care of, assuring that everyone, as I said before, is safe and clothed and fed, and you learn how to parent and love and teach them and show them all these things that, not only they need to do, but you want them to do. You teach your kid to have manners and polite. And I leaned on family too, to like my mother, to kind of show him that motherly love as well, that I, felt like at the time I wasn't able to give, because maybe I wasn't as warm and fuzzy as I once was. But yeah, you evolve. I mean, parenthood, it changes you, I think for the better, but it changes you no matter what. You could fight it all you want, but once the baby's put in your hands, you're a different person.
Yeah. It really is. It's a transformative thing. It's in a split second too.
Yep.
You think you're there during the pregnancy, but that's just, I mean, that's you and your girlfriend who you've decided to make a commitment to, like doing the next weird thing in the list of weird things that you've done, and still, as much as you can be connected to your wife after you're married, it really doesn't feel like at times until you bring a baby into the mix. And don't get me wrong, you live a full, happy life and not have a baby. I'm not saying that, but once you bring the baby into the mix, it's not just your girlfriend who you married and your boyfriend who you married, and we're all hanging out together. All of a sudden, there's this thing in the world that I care about more than anything, and you're directly related to it too. And so am I. Like I described in my book that there was this moment when my son was pretty young, and my wife and he took a bath together, and Kelly said, "Why don't you come take the baby from me and get him dressed, and I'll finish up in here and get a bath and everything, and actually get clean and not just sit in bubbles and stuff." And so I took him into his room. He was wrapped in a towel, and I had him, he was sitting kind of in the crook of my arm, and absolutely fine. I'm looking through the closet, through the 9 million baby clothes that people gave us when he was born, trying to figure out which one of these, is appropriate. And I'm talking to him, and everything's fine, and we're all good. And he just plants one of his feet in my side and pushes back in an instant. And he does this backflip out of my arms, and he's less than a year old. So everything just slows down. It really is true what they say. Like, I saw him falling in slow motion, and I began to reach for him, and I realized I couldn't catch him. And with literally no soccer skills to speak of, I used my foot and swept his head around because he was going to land on his head.
Okay.
And he just sort of flopped on the ground, and he was fine. And he starts crying, and I scream for my wife, and she comes running in, and I know he's fine. I can see how he went down. I somehow he almost didn't fall by the way I got my leg under and moved his head around and got him sideways. And when my wife came in the room and took him, and I explained what happened, I realized for the very first time in my life, Ryan, that she cared about him in a way she almost could never care about me. Like had I done something even unintentional that would have injured that kid, I don't know that our relationship ever rebounds from that. And that's to me, that's the description of what happens when you become a parent. Like, you are suddenly connected to someone in a way you've never have been before, and you can see how it trumps your connection in your marriage. And it's an interesting moment when you realize that I used to be the boyfriend, then I was the husband, now I'm the major domo for the kid, because she would leave me at the side of the road if it meant making that kid happy. But it's more, I'm talking more about the connection that you have. So now you have this amazing connection with your new son, but you can't kind of complete the circle. And maybe that's where a lot of the torture comes in, right? It's like all the unrecognized things or all the unrealized things that you thought were coming that are deserved to you. And then suddenly, because of, you must have been, how angry are you that in that moment, and how hard is it to get past the anger, I guess, of being like having those things stolen from you?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of anger. You go in with an anticipation of building a family with the person you love, and now I don't even really know what the experience was like for her. I don't know what it's like staying up in the middle of the night and trading places with this woman, trying to put a baby to sleep, trying to figure out what's wrong, laughing at somebody getting thrown up on, or, crying because it's been days of crankiness, that's all gone. I'm doing it on my own. I'm doing it with my parents. But it's different. As great as they are, as great as my whole extended family on every side is to help out, it's different. And especially now, having met Mary, she's a fellow widow as well. She's come through the other side, like I have, and we now get to do this together. This is her first child, Dylan, that we had last fall. We get to look at each other in the middle of the night and go, what are we going to do? What are we doing? Or, how amazing is this? And having missed that makes me sad. But having it now makes me all that much, more grateful for it that she and I are doing this together. And she's amazing. She's, the only person in the world that could ever talk to me into going for it again. And I'm so thankful I did, because of the experience of doing it with someone, raising a child with someone is incredible.
I would think too, Ryan, that probably the stuff that you missed out on with Brandon probably made you a better person in a way that will benefit him moving forward. So as I could see mourning the loss of that time spent the way you wanted to spend it, but I bet you it pays you back later. Yeah, it really is. But man, your life is inspirational and sad at the same time. You don't usually see that. And now happy.
Thank you.
Yeah. like really, like it's fascinating almost that you can have all these kind of conflicting feelings in one story.
Yeah.
You and Mary are doing something that I find really, it's special. Like I'm assuming that you're here talking to me about Tara, and at points I'm calling her your wife, and she's, I don't even know. It's so funny. Like at a person our age, the idea of being widowed is so foreign to me. Like I don't even know what the term is for. I guess you know what I mean. Like I'm almost lost in the conversation. But you and Mary are keeping, I guess, the memories of your spouses alive in your life too. So I'm assuming if we're talking about Tara like this, Mary probably has an open forum in your life to speak about her husband.
Absolutely. It's pretty amazing having both been through what we've been through. Our late spouses are very much a part of our life. We always talk about, we don't move on, but we move forward. We bring them with us. Their memories come with us. Our lives now are built on that foundation of time that we spent with them. And there's times where we both miss them and we tell each other. And there's times where we both laugh at a story, that we had with one or the other spouse, and it's what makes us. We appreciate life because of what we've been through and now what we've been able to put together. But yeah, our late spouses are very much a part of who we are and where we are right now in our lives, not just what we did in the past.
It's an incredible statement. You're the one with the sad story, and I have a tear rolling out of my right eye. So I don't. How you're not crying and I am is just. I
tell people, I cried a lot.
You might be out of tears, right?
It's possible.
So how do you? I want to ask a couple more questions just because I find it incredibly interesting. But Brandon's now how old is he?
He's 5 years old.
He's 5. So he's coming into the time where, in a more meaningful way, you're going to start telling him about his mother. But I'm assuming that day to day, does he call Brandon, or does Brandon call Mary mom?
Yes, he does. And one of the big points in our life, and I'm so thankful for her moving into this motherly role with him because she's amazing at it. And, I don't know if anybody could be as strong as her to not only step into a parenting role the way she has, through this relationship, but after what's happened, to have the strength and the courage to become his mom. I always look at her, I just find it incredible.
Yeah, well, and I was just going to say, I'm sorry, I'm
that's okay.
First, I'm going to apologize for cutting you off, and then continue cutting you off. But all of a sudden, I just realized that Mary loses her husband. She had a dream of having children with him too. Mm-hmm. That's gone for her, and then she steps in and has enough love in her heart to become Brandon's mother. That's again very special and giving. Like, do you think that this experience of losing a spouse at a younger age, do you think it puts you in a different perspective in the world? Because you're speaking to me from a perspective that most people, it would kind of fry their mind a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of openness and giving and understanding in your life that I don't think exists for most people. Do you think it's the experience that gives you that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. For as, an open, happy person as I thought I was before, I look at my life incredibly different now. And Mary has that same view. You're thankful for every day you have, even more so than you thought you were before. You get up, you can do anything you want, because you're here, and we kind of look at it that way. And our choice to, build our family by getting married. And, one of the things for Brandon that really solidified Mary as his mom was when we got married, we both gave Mary a ring. He did, I did. And, we said, we're getting married to this woman, you and I together. And from that moment on, from that day, from February 28th, 2015, he called her mom. That was it for him. Like, that was good in his head and his heart. And we've kind of gone on from there. And, but Mary and I definitely have a very distinct appreciation for life at this point.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this is going to seem like it comes out of left field, Ryan, but yesterday morning, my wife had business in the city last night, so she had to travel late in the day. So she worked from home during the day so that she could travel at night. And so she was in the house, she normally isn't. And she's working in the kitchen, and I come downstairs from my shower after the kids are off from school, and it's always a little weird because, like, I have all these house things I want to do, but once she's there, I feel like I have to be quiet. And, like, so I'm sitting down putting my shoes on. I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to have a productive day with her here getting in the way of everything? And as I'm putting my shoes on, I look up, and in our living room, there's water, a water stain in the ceiling that was literally not there an hour before. And there's water gathering under the paint. And I'm like, oh, I have a leak upstairs. And I went upstairs. I checked all the fixtures that I could. Everything I could see was, not leaking, but obviously maybe there's a pipe in the ceiling that's leaking. I come downstairs. I take a stool. I take a bucket. I take a screwdriver. I pop it through my drywall. I let it drain into the bucket. I call my insurance company. I say, hey, is this covered by my homeowners? It is. It's $1,000 deductible. I sit there for a minute going, oh, $1,000. Geez, you got to be kidding me. Okay, I move on. I call a plumber. The guy comes out. And in 20 minutes, I never thought about it again. And I'm going to tell you something. Maybe it's a little to do with age, and maybe it's a little to do with experience, but it is mainly due with the fact that my daughter has an incurable lifelong disease. And that I was catapulted from where I belong in the world as far as my understanding and perspective way ahead, like almost instantly. And this hole in my ceiling and the knowledge that someone's going to come in here with a saw in the next few days and cut the drywall open and rip it apart, and my house is going to be a mess. And it doesn't bother me. I don't flinch by it. It doesn't seem like an issue even. It just seems like something that needs to be done. And it sucks, and I wish it wasn't happening, but it doesn't compare to the knowledge that if I were to give my daughter too much insulin tonight when she goes to bed, her life could just end. Or that or any of the other things that come along with having, type 1 diabetes. And then, so now I'm going to make this crazy statement that I usually make to people with diabetes that I'm going to make to you because I think you'll understand it. I would trade anything, I really would, for my daughter not to have type 1. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposing for you for a moment, but as happy as you are right now, I bet you if a genie popped out of a bottle, you might choose to go back to the day before Tara gives birth and tell the doctor she's going to have an infection and you need to fix it and just live your life from there. But since that's not possible, I'm kind of grateful for how my life went because
Mm-hmm.
of how I see things now. I don't ever think I would have seen them this way.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because my daughter's still alive and Tara's not, if you have that feeling or if you it's not possible to have it as completely as I do because of your loss.
No, I mean, the way that I look at things now is, I'm here. I woke up this morning, I hopefully wake up tomorrow morning, but, I can do, whatever I choose to. I can choose to make my life better. I can choose to stand still and be stagnant. But, as long as I have that choice, I have the opportunity to do something, to enjoy myself, to better myself, my family, everyone around me. And you absolutely look at life differently because, if you have a problem and you can fix it, it's not necessarily a problem. And if you have a problem that you can't fix, then you kind of learn not to waste your energy on it because, well, there's nothing you can do about it. You focus on what's important, what's in front of you, what you can do. And yeah, there is absolutely a different perspective on life in general when you've gone through something serious as illness, death, things of that nature.
Yeah. All right, so Ryan, you take all this experience and you turn it into a foundation that carries your late wife's name. And what does that foundation strive to do day to day?
Our biggest thing is we want to educate people. We want new parents to understand that, maternal death is a very real thing in this country, but it doesn't have to be. We can educate people. They can be, aware of what these complications, things that they may run into, what they are. They can prepare themselves. They can educate themselves. We want to be a resource to these families to say, hey, this is a great experience. Let's ensure that it continues that way. Education, it's so powerful. You can't empower and embolden your voice and your message when you may need it the most if you don't, really know what you're talking about. And a lot of us don't. A lot of us don't think that's an issue here in the United States, that women aren't dying, but they are. So we really want to stress that there's things we can all go into childbirth knowing, into pregnancy knowing. Let's look out for our partners who are going through this, and let's be educated so that we can make sure that there's more successful outcomes. And one of the things that we're working on with the foundation is our Stop, Look, Listen initiative, where, we want it to be a tool for mothers and for doctors that when a woman says something, I don't feel well, it immediately takes the routine nature out of what's going on. We're going to stop. We are going to find out what's going on. See, what our mothers are taking issue with. Listen to them. Look at what's going on and change our whole perspective on the situation. Because if we can communicate better with our doctors, we can definitely change the outcomes. For a lot of families.
Was Tara's doctor a man or a woman?
You know what? I'd rather not get into
Sure, no
the
problem.
specifics with that, but
No, you don't need to. It just made me wonder that sometimes, just socially, there are things that happen to women that are very serious that society's very willing to just write off as because they're ladies and they're having their issues, and sometimes I wonder. If that perspective is gender specific or society specific, because
I completely understand that.
Yeah. So no problem. Okay, so wow. So what happened to Tara? Is the frequency? Would it surprise me if you told me the frequency of it in the U.S.?
It would, and Dr. Agrawal can speak to it more specifically than I can. But we're losing women on a daily basis, even here in the United States, and as someone also from New Jersey, you don't think of it. We had access to health care. probably above average healthcare because my wife was an educator. And we had access to great hospitals, local to us that you seemingly think, okay, we're going to go here. This is a place that can take care of us. And, you're kind of shocked that it's a possibility, in your environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ryan, I want to finish up with you by asking you a little bit about Brandon and what's he kind of growing into? What is he like? What kind of a kid is he?
He's amazing. He's 5, turned 5 in March. We actually went to his graduation from pre-K yesterday, which was a trip. People say it's funny, they graduate in pre-K, but you watch your kid go up there and sing and get their little diploma, and you see how proud they are. It's great. He's super bright. He's this Hansen kid. He looks just like his mom. He's a trip, and he's very outgoing, personable, funny, curious little boy, and it's been fantastic. And now to watch him with Dylan is really, really cool, and something I'd always hoped for.
Yeah, it's really cool that he has a brother. And Dylan's how old? I'm sorry.
Dylan is 7 months now. He was born last October.
Oh my gosh, man, you're right in the middle of it, huh? Well,
absolutely. I appreciate you, wanting to highlight this cause because it really is an important cause, and as a parent, the integral role mothers play not only within the family but within the community. So it's really important that we start doing a better job here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, dude, not just because of what's taken if this happens to you, but I look back and I think of all the things that I was so sure about while I was raising my kids and staying at home, that every once in a while my wife would pop her head in and be like, "You're an idiot," and how much that two voices like that, how valuable that is. You know what I mean? Like it is a real value. So not only is it a tragedy for the women who lose their lives giving birth, but for the fathers and the families and the children that are left behind, there's something taken from them if they don't have the good friends and the backup that you did to push you back in the world to find Mary. You could very well be, you and Brandon could be a sitcom sitting around together in your easy chairs watching television.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a strong guy, man. So
thank you. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
No, good. All the best to you.
You too, and all the best with your daughter.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, okay, let's not forget TaraHansenFoundation.com and MercForMothers.com. Visit them. Also, the bonus episode that's coming up right now, Merc for Mothers, is just, it's more... Geez, I have such a hard time talking about this for some reason because it's such it's in my personality to want to make it sound fun or funny or lighthearted or something, and this seems inappropriate. But at the same time, you just finished listening to Ryan. He's he's obviously a person who's living a very happy life, but I just can't bring myself to be jovial about it, and I guess that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, TaraHansenFoundation.com, MercForMothers.com. The bonus episode that's coming up, it's another download. You have to get it. It's not attached to this one. But I do suggest you listen to it. Like I said, in the middle of the episode, I did that interview with the person from Merc for Mothers with the intention of just taking small bits of what she said and putting it in here. But by the time it was finished, I thought this is really valuable for people to hear. So if you found yourself attracted to this story or the idea of understanding more about maternal mortality, I suggest you download it and give it a listen. That's pretty much it. There are links to these foundations in your show notes, and we will be back next week with a type 1 diabetes related podcast. I hope you guys didn't mind the detour today, but when this was presented to me as an option for an interview, it just sounded too important to pass up. So just wanted to help get the word out. Advocacy, right? I hope somewhere somebody's talking about type 1 diabetes the way we're talking about maternal mortality today. All right, guys, I'll see you soon.